From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana.
It was fairly top secret, this plan, so very few people knew about it, even within FIFA.
It may seem hard to believe, but just 2 weeks ago, hardly anyone knew about the plans that would turn the world of football upside down. Until one key meeting changed everything.
I met a good contact of mine at the start of last week, and I saw a document which indicated what was happening and gave me a sort of good way in to start asking some questions around various sources.
Martyn Ziegler is chief sports reporter for The Times, and last week he landed the biggest scoop the sporting world has seen in years. Gianni Infantino's plan to sell off the World Cup.
I thought it was a very important story and a big story within the football world. I knew it was going to be very controversial. I probably wasn't quite expecting the enormous outcry it's generated. I mean, I can understand why.
UEFA members have unanimously voted to boycott the World Cup if FIFA's plans to sell stakes in the World Cup proceed.
Well, this is war in world football. Europe, North and Central America's governing bodies for football in open rebellion against FIFA after it emerged that FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, was hatching a secret plot to sell off stakes in future World Cups.
Even world leaders waded in.
Football does not belong to investors. It belongs to the people who fill the stands, who stand on the touchlines week in, week out, rain or shine. The World Cup is not a product. It is the greatest competition in the world, and it was never anyone's to sell.
The international outcry forced the head of FIFA to retreat.
It's an astonishing, rather embarrassing U-turn from Gianni Infantino. How embarrassing is it?
Look, let's be clear about this.
Breaking news now, because FIFA President Gianni Infantino says that he is scrapping plans to sell stakes in the World Cup to private equity investors after days of mounting controversy as well as global backlash. Well, moments ago, Infantino released a statement.
Since Martyn broke the news of Infantino's plan last week, the FIFA president's once unassailable hold on power now seems to be crumbling.
The growing backlash against FIFA's private investment proposal has a new twist this morning. A senior advisor to President Gianni Infantino has quit.
UEFA has instigated the next move in its attempts to bring down the FIFA president. Letters of support for his re-election are rapidly being withdrawn from across Europe.
This is a step too far. It's the straw that's breaking the camel's back. Infantino has been kind of pushing, and everyone feels, if this was a sort of normal company, he'd have resigned already by now.
So how did Infantino's plans unravel so quickly? And can FIFA redeem itself after yet another scandal? The story today, Infantino on the brink. Martyn, the last time we spoke to you was just in the run-up to the World Cup when we did a profile on the podcast of Gianni Infantino, which feels rather prophetic in many ways now. But at the time, you said that he would be running FIFA until 2031. There was no doubt about it. He'd managed to shore up enough support. And for anyone who hasn't heard it, do go back and have a listen to that profile. Here we are, a week on from your big scoop, and his position's looking a lot more precarious. How long do you think he can last now? What are you hearing from inside FIFA?
I mean, yeah, it's incredible. The World Cup finished. He's told the National Association has made this incredible amount of $15 billion, record revenues for a World Cup, double the amount of the last World Cup. So it just seemed he was impregnable and no one was going to stand against him in the election next March. He'd already had 200 letters out of the 211 member associations backing him, including people like the English FA. Quite a major development, but it didn't take long for that all to change, and now he's absolutely precarious. And I think within football and lots of people who make up FIFA, there's a really strong push now to get rid of him.
What's happening inside FIFA right now? I mean, he's very good at trying to shore up support, trying to build coalitions. Is any of that working? What is he doing?
I mean, he's had a handful of countries come out and support him. I've been actually amazed by how few have done. I think that my last count, there's only like 16 or so had actually issued statements. And some countries that you thought might be sort of nailed on to back him so far haven't done so. For example, Saudi Arabia, I mean, that might change, but they haven't done so far. And you're getting criticism from across the world. You're getting the Jordanian Football Association saying that the pressure put on them previously to endorse him amounted to blackmail.
The president of the Jordan Football Association, Prince Ali, he was basically told that if you, as the Jordanian FA, come out and support Gianni Infantino's bid to be re-elected unopposed as FIFA president in March next year, then it would help your cause. And in his statement, he said that amounts to blackmail.
So it's really, really strong stuff.
And there seems like there's almost sort of an alliance now trying to topple him. Give us a sense of the dynamics behind the scenes.
Yeah, so we've got the sort of UEFA, the 55 member nations from Europe, perhaps all of them very much anti-Infantino now. They threatened to boycott the World Cup and said they would do unless he dropped the World Cup sell-off plan, and that actually led to its collapse. But then you've got this alliance between them, CONCACAF, which is the confederation which covers North and Central America and the Caribbean, something like 35 FIFA members there, and 47 members from the Asian Football Confederation. Now, Asia is perhaps not as united against Infantino as the other confederations, but the fact that the leaders there are part of the, perhaps we can call it a rebel alliance, I think that's really significant. And no wonder Infantino's calling his loyal lieutenants and not so loyal lieutenants to a kind of summit meeting to try and see where he goes from there, because I think he's under enormous pressure.
Tell us about that summit meeting. What are you expecting that to consist of? Who will turn up?
Well, it's mainly kind of the FIFA staff, so like the FIFA civil service, effectively, the paid executives. These aren't elected officials, so he's called them together to try and. My understanding is to see where he goes from there. To me, it smells a bit like a sort of last-ditch attempt to try and cling on to power and see some sort of strategy, if there's any way of getting out of the predicament he's in.
Does he have a core staff who are sort of banging the phones, trying to rustle up support for him? I mean, how is that whole process going?
He does. There's the kind of people who in the sort of national associations or the member associations section of FIFA are the ones who have been trying to do that. But even within his organisation, within FIFA, he's got serious problems because the chief operating officer, Kevin Lamour, effectively number 3 in FIFA, he put out a really blistering statement last week.
So this is a statement from Kevin Lamour in which he said, "My colleagues, some of whom have dedicated their lives to football, deserve better than contempt and intimidation. I know I have a duty of loyalty to my employer, but I also, and above all, have a duty of loyalty to certain values and to the upbringing I have received, and a duty to support my colleagues. And if that means I lose my job, then so be it. And I will understand and respect that decision. At least I'll sleep well tonight."
So that, hugely damaging. His senior advisor, Carlos Cordero, former Goldman Sachs investment banker. If anyone knows about investing in sport and the value of it, he would know. He was kept in the dark as well. He resigned last week. He said it's a bad deal for football, a bad deal for the member associations, a bad deal for the World Cup. And if he's saying that, wow, a former investment banker, I mean, no wonder people are thinking what's been going on here. We've also had Arsene Wenger, who's the former Arsenal manager, who's FIFA's head of global football development, perhaps the most famous face in the FIFA administration for many fans as well, indicating what his position is on this whole affair.
He says this, Wenger, the former Arsenal manager: "The decision to withdraw the project was absolutely necessary and beyond question, because I firmly believe in an independent FIFA that serves our game with commitment, transparency and integrity."
And then even the Secretary General, Matthias Grafström, did an internal staff email, which I've seen. So he's a kind of like the number two in FIFA. And he said this was a reproachable scheme. He didn't sort of name names, but if he's saying that and distancing himself from it, I really don't see where Infantino goes from here.
What can they do? I mean, what can FIFA do next? What are their next steps? Can they have a vote of no confidence in him? What would that look like?
So yeah, I think you need 43 countries out of the 211 to have call an emergency Congress and have a vote of no confidence. That's possible. You could have an emergency FIFA Council meeting, which is the 35 board members, and do the same there. I think the people who are sort of ranged against him are just playing a bit of a waiting game, see what happens. I think they would just prefer him to resign without being sort of forced out.
What happens if he refuses to step down?
Well, it will just play out as like a normal election cycle. I guess they will select what they think is a sort of unifying candidate to run against him at the elections next March. But I think there will be problems there because there's this talk of a so-called governance boycott where the confederations and people who are against him won't take part in meetings, won't ratify decisions. So effectively FIFA struggles to work as an organisation. So that's another problem he's facing.
It becomes incredibly dysfunctional. We're hearing that he's been, as part of his sort of attempt to shore up any kind of support, his team are not only ringing sort of famous footballers, trying to get people to come out and support him, but even the White House.
Yeah, so FIFA said that there has been no attempt by Infantino to contact Trump or the White House, but there have been reports in American publications saying that has happened. So that's not quite clear, but we do know that sources I've spoken to have said there's a group of former international players called FIFA legends who get paid to turn up to various FIFA functions and events. And my understanding is they've been contacted to people saying, will you come out and give a message of support to Gianni Infantino? And so far, no one's been prepared to put their heads above the parapet because clearly, he's toxic at the moment. And do you really want to nail your colours to that mast?
Career suicide. Martyn, stepping back to the original story, the reason Infantino is now in so much trouble, you broke the story, a brilliant scoop, global scoop really, about a week ago. When did it actually begin though? When were these plans first formed and how have they started to filter out?
So the talks with Joshua Kushner, the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, the lead investor, and JP Morgan, that the bank was involved, began at last year. So perhaps last September, October, is my understanding, is when it was first mooted, this idea, but it was kept very secret. If you look now with the kind of benefit of hindsight, all these things that Infantino announced and FIFA announced over the last year around the World Cup, just to me as highlights that the plan was already taking shape. So, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo having a 2-match suspension lifted, which would allow him to take part in the first opening two matches of the World Cup. That happened in November, a week after he and Infantino had a dinner at the White House. A couple of weeks later, the Peace Prize awarded to Donald Trump. Then the announcement that there are going to be hydration breaks in every World Cup match, which should allow branding from commercial sponsors, obviously the opportunity for TV companies to share advertising in those breaks. Another sponsorship deal with his big backers, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, in May. Sky-high ticket prices, unnecessary sky-high ticket prices. What was the point in trying to fleece fans so much? And then you get to this the Balogun scandal with the striker who had his suspension lifted actually during the World Cup to allow him to play for the USA after Trump's phone call. I think the message here was Infantino was showing, I can make the best show commercially, and we're going to have a long half-time show as well, which will break all FIFA's rules about the length of the time of the half-time break. But what we can do here, I'm showing potential investors, forget the rules, the normal rules. We can do what is best commercially to bring the money in, and this is why you should invest with us. And that certainly didn't help when the actual revelation of the scheme came out. When I learned about it towards the end of the World Cup, there had been a few sort of rumours about was something big going to happen, but nobody really knew what was planned, that's for sure.
Wow. Do you think he was, on the margins of the World Cup, having meetings trying to persuade people to sign up to this great scheme?
Oh, he's definitely having talks with like Joshua Kushner about it, and I'm sure other people in the White House, because he had such close links there to try and, get ready for this big announcement. I mean, there was some suggestions he was planning to do so on the eve of the World Cup final itself.
Really? This big scheme about selling off the World Cup would have come just before the final?
Well, yes, but he was sort of dissuaded of doing so. I think people thought probably quite rightly that would just absolutely, cause a sort of potentially overshadow the World Cup itself, his big event. So he was dissuaded from doing that. And I think also he'd been a bit spooked by the controversy over the Balogun decision. So he'd taken the decision to delay it. And I think they wanted to wait probably like another week or 10 days before I actually found out and managed to publish the story. I think basically it sort of forced them to come out and confirm it, much earlier than they planned to do so.
Martyn, you've just outlined a number of the scandals that Gianni Infantino is sort of linked to, the things that were already raising questions before this big plan was reported on by you. Do you think this final scheme, is it a bit like an Icarus moment? He's just sort of flown too close to the sun. He was getting away with all these gradual changes. For all the sort of controversy around them, he was still managing to get them pushed through. Then he just went a bit too far. Was he just emboldened by all of this?
I think so. If you look sort of historically, soon after he took over, he tried a kind of similar thing, but not with the World Cup. Tried to get private investment for a new Club World Cup tournament and a new Global Nations League with SoftBank, Japanese banks, or underwritten by Saudi money. And Europe blocked that at the time. It was a kind of football politics story, but it wasn't sort of huge news because it wasn't the World Cup. It was talking about new tournaments. So he probably thought, that was blocked, but I'll have another go perhaps. And then he tried to get the World Cup to be held every 2 years instead of every 4. That failed. He's had a few things which he's not managed to achieve, but it's sort of not deterred him. And I think he thought, well, I can keep going. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer financial incentives to my 211 member associations. Each of them will get $40 million over the next 4 years if they agree to the scheme, or 75% less if they don't. And he thought, this is a good way of, Europe won't be able to stand in my way this time because I'm going to have the majority of the rest of the world behind me. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work out like that.
And how much do you think the financial incentive was important for him personally? I mean, how much did he stand to make if this scheme had gone through?
Well, we don't know if there would have been sort of bonuses that he would have got just from doing the private investment sell-off. I think it's probably likely that they would have been significant. But sources with knowledge of the whole process and discussions have said that this new organisation, FIFA Forward Enterprises, that was going to handle the commercial interests of the World Cup and other tournaments, that it was going to have a chief executive being paid $30 million a year basic plus bonuses. And that the idea was that Gianni Infantino would, when he stopped being FIFA president in 2031, that he would take that job. FIFA said that hasn't been discussed. That was never discussed, but my sources say that was indeed the plan.
And he's a man who seems to appreciate the high life.
Well, he flies everywhere by private jet, and he likes to be sort of treated like a world leader. So I wouldn't say he's, particularly like, likes, yachts and things like that. But I think he likes mixing with world leaders, mixing with celebrities, feeling like he's a world leader. So when he went to the FIFA Congress in Vancouver in April, FIFA asked that he was given the same sort of police security measures normally reserved for people like the US president. So, motorcades, red lights being stopped. So, I think he clearly likes feeling like that. I think he is motivated personally, financially as well. That's for sure. So that's why I think he's clinging on to power so desperately, because without the FIFA presidency, what is he? What does he do? This is his life.
And how important was the American president, Trump and Kushner, the brother of his son-in-law, how important were they to the financial side of this proposition?
Well, obviously Joshua Kushner was hugely important. He was the lead investor. FIFA said they had interest from investors across the world, but he was certainly the lead one. And clearly the links built up between Infantino and the sort of Trump network in the build-up to the World Cup have been hugely important to getting this idea sort of, as far as he saw it, off the ground and ready to be launched.
Martyn, you've covered so many other big political footballing scandals over the years, and you've broken quite a few of them too, but how does this compare? How does it compare to FIFA-gate and the corruption, or the stories around Russia and the World Cup in Qatar and the Super League? I mean, for you, how does this scandal compare?
I think this is perhaps the one that has got the most global attention. The European Super League was a huge story, but it's a kind of European story. This is sort of global, and it's actually put the whole FIFA president's position in jeopardy. Perhaps similar to the 2015 corruption scandal around Sepp Blatter, but in a way this seems bigger because it's like the World Cup, which all fans feel that this is their tournament. It's part of them. They look forward to it every 4 years, and I think there's a sort of personal investment perhaps in this story from the man and the woman on the street that you haven't had with previous scandals and corruption scandals.
Football is, sort of a game for the everyman, and yet it seems to attract more scandals than most sports. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because it's so popular. So if it's popular, then it attracts money, and if it attracts money, then it attracts people wanting to make money out of it. And if it attracts people that want to make money out of it, you're going to attract people who want to make money out of it illegitimately. So I think that's it. And it's easy for many people who, their vote means a lot. So if you're somebody from a tiny country, your vote is as important as the vote of England or Germany or Brazil. And you're a tiny nation, and you think, I can use this, if not to enrich myself personally, but certainly to enrich my country's football association. And that's why there's this sort of system of patronage and power, and that's why a lot of people also are thinking, should we change the way FIFA is run and led in the future? Do we have a sort of a rotation of the FIFA presidency so we don't have one man or one woman in such a position of power?
That might be one way of mitigating, again, that kind of power concentration. Whoever does come in next after Infantino, though, will inherit many of his policies. What are the big legacies he'll leave behind that you think will stick?
Well, I think he was the person who brought VAR, the sort of video refereeing and technology into football. He was very much a driver of that, and I think that door's closed now. There's no going back on that. And for a lot of people, that's been a very significant change to football, professional football and watching football. I think when we look back, that's probably going to be his biggest legacy, as well as this sort of expansion of the World Cup now. It's a very sort of bloated competition up from 32 to 48 teams. He's even talked about expanding it further to 64. So those are probably things that have been left behind. And of course, it was he who delivered the World Cup to Saudi Arabia in 2034, and that's going to be another legacy of his.
Do you think after a scandal this big, that has literally got global attention, that has made everybody stop and look at FIFA again, do you think there's any way that FIFA can try and redeem itself? What does it need to do in the future to try and change its reputation?
Well, obviously it needs a new leader. I think there needs a proper reform process. I mean, Infantino was meant to be the great reformer, but actually a lot of his reform proposals he never carried through and even overturned them. Looking at the structure and how it operates, I think it needs a proper look at the whole process and the whole system and structure, and just to try and make sure we're not talking about the same thing in 8 years' time.
That was Martyn Ziegler, chief sports reporter at The Times. There's likely to be lots more on this story coming in the next few days, so do keep an eye out for his reporting at thetimes.com. And if you have any questions on this or any other story we've covered, do email them in to thestory@thetimes.com. The producers today were Harry Stott and Jennifer Kennedy. The executive producer was Edward Drummond. Sound design was by Dave Creasy, and theme composition was by Mal Lassetto. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.